Welcome back to Healthy Bites. Today I'm going to show you how to make a cake with a difference. This is my chocolate cake made with ragi and made with jaggery and therefore so much healthier but extremely tasty. The ingredients are jaggery, melted butter, condensed milk, white chocolate, baking powder, cocoa powder, salt, curds, ragi cornflakes, atta and ragi flour. So before you start the batter for this cake, there are two things that you need to do. One is take whatever your pan is, put a little bit of butter or oil in it and put some atta in it, and therefore this is coated and your cake won't stick to it. And also preheat your oven at 180 degrees. So by the time you make this batter, the oven is nice and hot for the cake to go in and it will start rising immediately. Now the first step in this is to put together our butter and jaggery. Now I like to use jaggery in this recipe because jaggery is a lot less refined than sugar and definitely healthier. So therefore jaggery. So whenever I find a recipe and I find it has sugar, I have started substituting it with jaggery but using more quantity because jaggery is not as sweet as sugar, which tells us therefore that it is not as refined. So once you have this like this, don't worry about the little knobs of jaggery, that will all settle down as the batter comes together. The next step is to put our baking powder into the curds, and this is what helps the cake rise and become nice and fluffy. So just put it together, and if you find that your dahi doesn't start bubbling, then your baking soda is not right, it must be old, and therefore your cake will not rise. So rather than wait for the heartache right at the end, just throw it out right now. Don't bother making this cake with the same amount of baking powder. Get a new batch and start again. Okay. So this is done. Let this bubble away. In the meanwhile, I'll tell you about why I want to use ragi. So ragi is a millet that is natural to India's soil, unlike wheat and rice and maida and all of the rest. And therefore it's very good for us. It takes a very little water while cultivating, and ragi is rich in iron and calcium. It's really healthy for us, and if we can find ways of bringing it into our diet, that's excellent. So I use it in this cake. It's not going to be as light and springy as maybe a cake from outside, but then it's going to be so much healthier for us. And I also use atta. I never use any maida in my baking because maida has been refined so much more, and you don't get anything out of maida. It's just going to give you a little bit of fluff to the cake, which I think is detrimental to our health if we are willing to compromise on things like maida. Just get rid of maida from your cupboard and you'll find you'll do just fine. So initially when I moved from maida to using atta, I would find my cakes were a little denser and people would say, what happened to your cake? And then I realized that nothing happened to it, it's just atta. And when I weigh my options, I'm happy to use atta and get a slightly denser cake. So I've used the same logic with ragi. There's a lot more flavor that you get out of ragi, especially when you mix it up with chocolate. Somehow that ragi and chocolate balance works out really well. So once this is done, add in the atta, and you can see that the dahi has bubbled up. So that's perfect, that's ready to go in now. So put that in. And at this point I'm going to add a little bit of water. So just mix it well for a couple of minutes and I'll show you what to do next. So I've been mixing this for a couple of minutes and you can see it's come together well. It's already got a brownish tinge, which tells me that when I put in chocolate into it, when I put in my cocoa powder, I'm going to get a rich dark cake. So time for the cocoa. And for whatever reason, salt makes chocolate taste more chocolatey. So a pinch of salt and the rest of the baking powder. And at this point I'm going to add a little bit more water, otherwise the cake will not be liquid enough to give us a nice soft sponge. And then just gently turn it around. Now this is a cake recipe that you don't want to beat and beat and beat, because what happens is the ragi then becomes very glutinous and you get a heavy dense cake. So rather than doing that, just stir it in. All your ingredients have to be well stirred in. That's it. Nothing more than that. As soon as it is well stirred in, your cake batter should just fall off like that. That's it. It's ready. Put it into your cake pan and put it into the oven for about 180 degrees for about 30 minutes and check at the end of it. When you put in a knife or a skewer and it comes out clean, then your cake is ready and we can decorate it. So while the cake is baking, let's talk about the icing. Now this is icing for a decadent cake because it's got condensed milk. And I know there's a little flux between the fact that I'm using jaggery in the cake, but I'm then talking about condensed milk. It's purely because this is to please us. This is to look aesthetically good and also to please our sense that, you know, there's something refined in it. So there is condensed milk, white chocolate and a little bit of butter that's going to go into the icing. And what I do is I put it into a double boiler, which is basically a pan with some water and another pan on top of it. And the top pan should not hit the water. If it hits the water, then it heats up the chocolate too fast. And the idea of cooking this way is that there's gradual heat that is dissipated towards the chocolate and it doesn't go click. Otherwise, sometimes what happens when chocolate is put in touch with heat very quickly, it melts, but then it solidifies immediately and it's not a nice looking thing. So I'm going to add the condensed milk at this point. Yes, it's a whole can, but it's something that I would be very happy to make for a cousin's birthday because I know exactly what has gone into it. And I'm not going to tell them that, you know, there's ragi and jaggery and all that. Absolutely not. These are state secrets. So what you need to do at this point is just put the pan on simmer and let this melt together for about a good 5-10 minutes until it is all even. So it's been on a simmer for about 5 minutes and you can see it's beautiful, thick, glossy, looks velvety, looks yummy. And all you need to do now is switch it off, keep it aside, let it cool, and as it cools, it'll start to thicken. So it'll be lovely to coat over our cake. And we'll come back once the cake is done and this is cooled. So the cake has had about 30 minutes in the oven. You can see that it's nice and cooked. It's got these little cracks, which I love because it tells you that a cake has been homemade and there's so much of love that has gone into it. So also you can note that the icing has thickened. It's oozy, gooey, it's yum. So now the thing is to put it together. All I like to do is put a little bit of icing on top. And of course, if you're feeling more decadent, cut the cake in half lengthway this way and put some icing in the middle also. That's for a real special occasion. So what you do is just spread it out evenly. Spread as much or as little as you like. You can make a really thin layer of icing, or when it's for my cousins, I go really thick. When it's for my grandparents, it's on the thinner side. They don't like it as sweet. But then I love this recipe for a cake because it's got ragi, it's got chocolate, it's got all the things that we love about sweets, but it's also got a healthy note to it in the form of ragi, in the form of jaggery. And it's not going to taste significantly different. That's the beauty of this recipe. So once you put in a layer, take ragi chips or ragi cornflakes, whatever you find, and just dot them. And be beautiful about it. Take your time. Just put one on top of the other like this. And keep doing that until you finish the rest of the cake. So this is my recipe for my ragi and chocolate cake. A delicious, delicious dessert and a special occasion treat that I love to make with this condensed milk and white chocolate icing. So try it out, give it a go, and let me know what you think.